Welcome everybody to Beer, Bourbon, and Games. I am your host, Chris. We are now in October. We are in spooky season, as you can see behind me. And today on the channel, we are going to drive back into Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and we're going to sit down with another brewery owner. We are going to talk to Adam from Cartel Brewing. Hopefully you guys will grab something to drink, crack it open, sit back, relax, and enjoy the interview. And remember guys, if you're new to the channel and you have not done so yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and leave a comment down below. I look forward to seeing your thoughts. Let's roll that footage. We're just going to start off with a really simple question here. Go ahead and tell the viewers at home a little bit about you and how you got into brewing.
Sure. So back in, I think it was the January of 2008, a friend of mine had gotten into home brewing, kind of playing around with it a little bit, and obviously I had, but only been 21 for only a couple of years at that point. So I thought it'd be interesting to participate in, and pretty much was hooked on the hobby from the first time. And since then, we had brewed a little bit more together a couple of other times, and was able to put together the first recipe I actually brewed. It was my own take on a Mad Elf. We did full all grain, no extracts, and we used fresh plums instead of cherries. So that was kind of the substitution from the Mad Elf. At the time, that was one of my favorite strong winter beers that Trogs had put on. So just kind of hooked from there. And I would say for about 4 or 5 years from that point, just kind of tossed around the hobby. I wasn't like super serious about it. Maybe brewed like 5 or 6 times a year. Had some dumpers, of course. At the time, one of my favorite beers was actually a Newcastle brown ale. So I tried doing a clone recipe of that actually turned out to be a beer that I made pretty frequently. And the original friend that I brewed with, we kind of, he kind of toned down on the hobby, and I actually met a new friend who was supposedly getting out of the hobby, and he sold me all his equipment, but then a few months later he ended up brewing with me every time. So I bought his equipment, but he ended up brewing with me for a few years, actually leading up to the stowaway batch that we entered in the 2015 Lidditz Craft Beer Fest competition that won. So yeah, that's kind of the backstory. I don't know if there's any other specific questions that you had about that. We could go all day about those 5 years of my life, but 2008 to 2014 we're kind of toying around with the hobby. I would say 2014 until now was more of a serious homebrewing career, if you will.
So what made you finally jump from homebrewing to I want to make this a business?
So the funny thing was, my background and career for the last 10 years, over 10 years, has been in marketing, market research, primarily a lot of digital marketing, analytics, social media. But because I had been a fan and following craft beer since 2006, 2007, I always was fascinated by kind of watching the market, kind of seeing what craft beer was doing, looking at the growth, and kind of even predicting some of the numbers that actually came true, just looking at the trends and what was happening. So it was kind of encouraging to see that some of the things that I had talked about years before they happened actually happened, over and above even what some of the predictions were. But ironically, I wasn't interested in opening a brewery at the time, and this was probably 5 or 6 years ago, simply because of that growth and the saturation of the market. It just seemed like everybody was trying to get into opening a brewery. But then very quickly, through watching the market I noticed that the landscape had kind of shifted more towards the small local tap room model, the enjoy fresh, buy local, consume fresh, drink it 50 feet from where it was made, have a conversation with the person who made it. And I started noticing that fewer consumers were likely to purchase beer from a grocery store shelf as much as they had used to. Not that they don't anymore, but people in the local markets were more interested in supporting a local business, purchasing beer as fresh as possible, knowing that it was treated and handled well from grain to glass, and obviously with certain distribution models and the grocery stores and things, you never really 100% know if that beer was treated well, if it was stored at room temp and it was supposed to be cold, those sorts of things. Now obviously there are breweries that do a fantastic job ensuring that quality control, but with the market being so saturated with so many different options, which is amazing. I mean, this is the best we've ever seen as far as accessibility and choice. Obviously that model has gotten way more efficient at preserving and protecting the quality of those beers.
Now, you mentioned a little bit there about there being a ton of beer on shelves. Obviously, you can't go to a store without seeing at least 500 IPAs. Do you have any desire to eventually distribute, or are you looking to stay taproom only?
Well, initially the lucrative component of the model was really self-distribution, on-site sales. Obviously, there was a culture that I observed for a number of years where breweries were releasing cases and beer directly to the consumer. Obviously with the last 18 to 24 months, I feel like that model has completely shifted, and the whole line life, wait in line for a release, has kind of in some instances died. I don't think it's completely dead, but with the ability to ship beer directly to someone's home and all of the different things that people instituted to adapt to where things were during COVID and all of that. We've talked about potentially releasing certain beers or canning certain beers eventually for distribution. It would have to be based on the style of those beers and what the marketability would be. Obviously, there are a lot of styles that are very competitive and saturated, so we would want to analyze if there are any deficiencies or if there's any room for additional representations of certain styles of beer that would work well within the distribution model. But for now, we're looking to primarily self-distribute everything directly to the consumer from our location.
Makes sense. You are relatively newer, so at this point, just kind of play it safe, see how the market goes, because things could shift at any moment for sure. But since you are mainly just all tap room, let's talk quickly about your tap room. You have a really nice little nano brewery here. Can you tell the people coming in kind of what they can expect when they arrive?
Sure. One of the things I loved about this space, and I kind of had my eye on it for several years, and we were fortunate to be able to move in here back in March of 2020. It's small, it's quaint. We've probably got about 32 seats plus a few at the bar. What they can expect is, from the beginning, our focus has been really quality over quantity. So, we don't make super large batches. Obviously, I wanted something that I could scale easily from my half-barrel homebrew system to, we have a 5-barrel system here, which allows us to have a lot of diversity in the styles that we produce, and have a little more control over what the outcome is, efficiency and quality wise, while still allowing us to make batches that are small enough where, if something doesn't quite work out, it's not the end of the world. If for some reason we have to not release that beer. Fortunately, we haven't had to do that with any of our beers yet, but it just gives us kind of an R&D type of an experience here. So what I like to do if I'm hanging out during opening hours that we're open and customers are hanging out, I love engaging with the customers. Sometimes I'll pull some old vintage bottles or barrel aged bottles or different things that we may or may not have on tap. Just as I engage with people and understand what kinds of beers that they like and they enjoy, I can get a read on maybe we have something that's not on the menu that they might enjoy a sample of, or even something that might be finishing up in the tank that I can go in the back and pull a sample of. I enjoy that part of it. It's not a necessary thing, but we focus on creating an environment that allows people to have conversation, almost like the local coffee shop. We talk about, we don't have televisions here. We don't feature sports games or NFL events or anything like that. We're not that type of a bar. Although we might occasionally have a television set up for like a soccer match or a rugby match, because some of us actually enjoy that and some customers enjoy that as well. But we're really here to provide a place to have a conversation. If you're by yourself, just a place to kind of unwind and think and clear your head, enjoy a good beer, and have a great conversation with myself or our small staff who all really have a passion for what we're doing here. We're fortunate to have a small team that really loves this and enjoys all of the factors that a tap room can provide. So.
Perfect. I would say that for sure this is a very inviting atmosphere that you've created. And I have seen you engage customers before. I've partaken in some of those random vintage bottles. So it's always a good time. I love kind of just seeing the head brewer be here, kind of interacting with the guest and not hiding in the back. So it's a really cool environment. Very quaint, definitely coffee shop, like you said. It's a really relaxing environment. But you did kind of mention two things that segue into questions I had for later, so we'll just kind of jump into them. You mentioned your tanks that you have. You had a 5-barrel system. Can you talk a little bit about some of the equipment you have total here?
Sure. So in my process for a few years and looking at what kind of a system I would like, I ultimately arrived on, I've used Blickman for over 6 years with my homebrew setup. I have enjoyed the way they set up their systems. There's also the element that I enjoy of kind of tinkering and building out my own system with the parts that they provide, just kind of modifying things, and that's kind of like it's kind of like adult Legos. I love tinkering and figuring out how to make things work better and designing systems. So we actually went with, after looking at a number of different systems, I ultimately ended up going with the Blickman hybrid brew house. A couple of years ago, probably 3 years now, Blickman started dipping their toes in the water with commercial scale equipment. Same quality engineering, and the price point is unmatchable. I mean, I think some of the other systems we looked at, equivalently would have costed almost double what we paid for the Blickman, and so obviously the first thing I think of is, well, if the price is that much difference, where's the hook? Where's the lack in quality? What's the catch? And looking at videos, contacting other breweries that had been using Blickman's hybrid systems, I heard nothing but rave reviews about it, and so I felt really comfortable working with Blickman on this first brew house at the 5-barrel level. So we sourced our tanks from a company in Baltimore, so we didn't go with Blickman for the fermenters. We went with Carolina Brew Tech. really good stuff, high quality. You can just tell, when things arrive, like the little details that go a long way. Very impressive to me. So, yeah. So we're working with a 5-barrel system. Some batches, obviously are less than 5 barrels, depending on how much, what the marketability is. Obviously, I like doing a lot of big beers. So if I want to do a beer that's going to end up at like 12%, I'm not going to end up with 5 barrels of that beer. I'm probably going to end up with 3 or 4 barrels of that beer. So it makes it nice to kind of have that ability to, if we want to do a half batch or a slightly smaller batch of something to test out, we can do that and still end up with a good bit of beer, as opposed to spending the same amount of work with my half-barrel homebrew system doing a test batch and only ending up with 1 keg at the end. We tried that a couple of times, and both times the resulting beer ended up being a hit, and we were like, I wish we had just done this at a larger scale, because we spent all this time brewing it and we ended up with 1 half-barrel keg of it. So we haven't really done anything since then on the smaller system, other than the barley wine that we make. We actually take second runnings into my homebrew system, and we hard boil it, from 20 gallons to 10 gallons to create some additional caramelized malt that we then infuse in the main boil kettle at knockout. So there are some cool uses to the old homebrew system that can really add to what we're doing with the large system.
So you said that you've got the Blickman system and you outsourced the fermenters to a different company. How many fermenters do you currently have?
We have 4 unitanks. I was kind of skeptical about the unitank idea because I've seen a lot of people use, fermenters and bright tanks and all of that. I gotta say, I'm kind of a huge fan of the unitank model. We've been able to get extremely efficient, clean beer carbonated at just where I need it to be with very, very minimal effort. So it's also nice to have a beer that you don't have to transfer too many times before it gets into the keg. It literally spends its entire time in that tank, from fermentation to carbonation to kegging. And I think that there's some value to that.
The other question that I had that kind of we're going to segue into from the original was, you newly just announced that you're going to start having food here. I know that you have food trucks, and I'm sure that'll probably still continue, the pizza tents here a lot. But you announced that you've got some paninis coming. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Sure. So we're really excited to, we're a little over 6 months in now to have been able to bring in, a full-time cook, chef, friend of ours, friend of the brewery. Just created an opportunity for him to really create and find fulfillment in his work. So we're starting out with 5 paninis. We officially kind of launched it this past weekend. The previous weekend we were selling them, but we weren't pushing them as heavily. One of the reasons why we didn't really start with food was, obviously when any brewery opens up, there's a massive amount of turnout in most cases. At least for us, there was, and many others that I've seen. So we want to be able to be excellent in everything that we do, and I felt like adding food into the mix with that amount of people coming during grand opening would have provided more opportunities for us to screw up or to kind of not provide the best experience possible. So kind of waiting until everything, we've kind of gotten into a really good flow of things here at the brewery. We're beer first. We're a brewery that serves food, not a restaurant that makes beer. There's room for both concepts, and we love both concepts. We would consider ourselves the brewery that offers food. So being able to really focus on getting the beer program off the ground where we feel like it needs to be was the main priority. But now that that's where we feel like it should be, we're excited to bring a food program to market. As far as the pop-ups go, I think we're always going to be open to supporting other local food trucks, pizza tent. We love Corey and what he's been doing with that, so we're definitely going to carve out a regular spot for him. We might look to add, Monday nights and Wednesdays. Like, that's probably what we've been talking about, adding a couple more days. We might turn Monday nights into, pizza tent only, where we don't have our kitchen open. Pizza tent's the option. It also creates an option for a lot of industry folks like us who, they're usually off on Tuesdays, or kind of Monday nights their night to that's their weekend. That's their night to go out and have a good time, and there aren't a lot of options for them. So, we've had a couple of Monday night events, private events or semi-soft public events where we were open for a lot of the industry folks that were looking for a place to go. So it just seems right to, add that as an option and still fulfill our goal to support other local food vendors and other businesses by having Pizza Tent come on Mondays. So, as well as, if we had a vendor here recently who did a pop-up for Thai street food. He lives in Austin via LA. A lot of cool stories he has traveling the country doing his pop-ups. He loved it here. He spends a lot of time between the locations for Other Half Brewing Company. But he talked about wanting to come back again, so he's always welcome here. So we'll probably have him at some point. And we'll always create opportunity for some other local businesses, some pop-up events and things.
I definitely think that you did it the right way. I was here on the grand opening, and it essentially was a block party. There were no seats available. There were tables outside. Everyone was having a good time. So getting through all the growing pains is a very smart idea, especially when it was so close to COVID, and who knows what's going to happen. Might not be the smartest to kind of launch food at the same time. So definitely excited for them now. They sound fantastic. So I think you're going to do it right. Better to launch with something you're really proud of than, half-assing it just to get food out there. So definitely a good way to go about it. But the next thing I want to talk about is the name. I always like to find out where a brewery came up with their name, especially if they have something unique to it. Your name is Cartel Brewing and Blending. Blending is not something that I've really seen before in a name. It's normally either brewing company, brewing, brewery. Where did you come up with that concept to have that name instead?
So we'll start with the name Cartel, and we'll get to the blending secondary. The word cartel kind of came from multiple things. I used to do a lot of beer trading and just going to different releases and pursuing, kind of hunting, all these different bottles and cans. And I'm from New England, so I've been following like Treehouse since they were in a shed. Got to know some of the people there. My parents still live, a half hour from the brewery there. And so naturally, like, there was a point where people were seeking their stuff out a lot, and it was not as available as it is now in as high quantities, and so there was a lot of trading going on, a lot of things like that. I forget who it was, but someone kind of jokingly called me the beer cartel because I was, supplying people with beer and kind of, secondary, trading and all of that stuff. It's a cool subculture. It's very interesting. So that was kind of one of the things. There was a beer that we had made a while ago, starting I think in like 2015, 2016, that I ended up calling Vanilla Cartel. And at the time, I was calling myself, Wicket Gate. I've gone through a number of different names throughout the years. Wicket Gate is actually the small door in a large gate. So when I was partnering with one of my old homebrew buddies, and we were looking at starting a place, we were looking to call it that, just because we were like the small door in a large industry, and it was kind of like we're just a couple of guys making some homebrews. From a marketing standpoint, people didn't understand what it was; they mispronounced it. It just wasn't a sustainable name. But there was a beer that I would make called Vanilla Cartel. way back in the day. It was a rye barrel aged imperial stout, usually 12 to 14%. Big, robust beer that aged in a Dad's Hat rye barrel for at least 9 to 12 months, with a lot of fresh Madagascar vanilla beans. And I was thinking about that name, and then I started researching the word cartel and looking at all the different definitions of the word. And there was one definition that I came across that kind of struck me, and the definition really was an independent group of manufacturers and suppliers aligned with a common interest. And I thought, well, that kind of talks about what independent craft beer is. You know, we're a bunch of independent manufacturers and suppliers, and we're aligned with a common goal to just enhance the craft and, you know, get more people converted to all of the options and quality that there is within this industry, away from just your standard, typical macro beers that are available. So I thought that was really cool. And then part of me thought, why should the drug people get claim to a particular word? Like, why do they get to have the word and nobody else, when the definition can really align with things more positive and redeeming than just trafficking and drugs and things like that? So we're kind of looking to redeem that word for something more positive than what people are familiar with that word. We're kind of redefining it, you know, in our little space here. Who knows if we will, but it was something that was kind of a personal challenge to me. And I also thought, I have a strong conviction about, if we are to eventually start being involved in charitable work and making donations to nonprofits that we care about, I would love to support organizations that are anti-trafficking, anti-human trafficking, anti-drug trafficking. And so how cool would that be if we as Cartel Brewing would be the people supporting things that were antithetical to drugs and trafficking and all that. So we're kind of like, you know, we're the good cartel, not the bad cartel. So as far as the blending goes, so blending is actually a traditional term. We're not the only ones to use it. There are several craft breweries in the U.S. that are brewing and blending, but their name is more related to, it is a barrel aging term. So you might barrel age a batch of beer in a number of barrels, and then you blend those barrels together at crash or carbonation, post barrel aging. So blending is a barrel aging term. So it does apply to us because I do a lot of barrel aging. I love barrel aged beers and kind of playing with different spirit barrels, and eventually at some point maybe some wild sour barrel aging. So I already kind of do that, but one of the concepts that I came up with as far as blending is we have 3 different ways that we blend here. We blend in the barrel aging, whether it's single barrel or blended barrel. Blending in the, well, actually that would be 4 different ways. Blending in the fermenter. So a lot of breweries already do this with secondary addition of fruits and purees and things like that. We blend in kegs. So we might make a batch of porter, and we end up with a number of kegs that are true to style, that porter, untouched by anything else, because myself and many others appreciate just a classic style of beer. Don't throw anything in it. I also appreciate the addition of coffee or coconut or maple syrup. I mean, I'm from New England. I love maple syrup. So I love that idea as well. So we could take a batch of beer, brew one batch of beer, and end up with 3 different variants from that batch based on the process that I have for blending in the kegs with fresh ingredients and fresh flavors. It also enables you to keep the freshness of those flavors as much as possible. There's also the concept of blending at the taps. So eventually we might have a lot more of this baked into our model here. We do have beers on tap that can be blended. One beer that I'll be announcing soon is We have our Mug Club Cream Ale, which is like a 5%, real crisp, clean. Almost like they used to call them the poor man's Pilsner. I think it's better than that. But and then we have our Villain Barley Wine. So you have a 5% cream ale, you have an 11.8% barley wine. You blend the two together at the taps 50-50, and you get like an 8 point something percent strong ale, where you get some of those caramely notes and flavors from the barley wine, but not the 11.8% heavy boozy alcohol sweetness, the over-the-top flavors that you get from a single pour of that. So it gives you another option. So now we have 2 beers on tap, but there's 3 options with those 2 beers. Another example that we've done is we've taken our milk stout and blended it with our Amish Mug Club, which is our cream ale, blended in the keg with fresh Amish farm root beer. So it gives it kind of like a hint of a root beer flow. When you blend that beer with a milk stout, you get more of a dark mug style root beer. And the lactose from the milk stout gives it that creaminess that you would get from a root beer. So there are customers that will create their own. They might want to have 50-50 of an IPA and a sour, and now they've got a sour IPA with some depth of flavor. So there's really no end to what can be done when you blend at the taps. But one of the things I envision in the future would be to have like a base sour recipe, like a Goza or Berliner Weiss, and then we might actually have fresh pressed juice options on tap. So you could have that sour beer perfectly as is, as the traditional style holds. So you got those purists that don't want to touch anything about it. And then you got someone that might want a little fruit in that beer. So you might take that beer and finish it on some fresh pressed fruit. Stout people, you could take a stout and throw a shot of fresh espresso in the stout at the time of tapping. So now you get the freshest coffee you could possibly get, combined with that stout. I've made tinctures and extracts, if you will, myself, using Madagascar vanilla beans and alcohol. So there's potential to have that infusion in a beer as well, whether it's a stout or a cream ale. Who doesn't like a little bit of vanilla to kind of sweeten things up, or make it a little more creamy without adding a ton of sugar. So there's really no limit to what can be done with the blending concept, and I'm sure we'll constantly discover more ways to infuse that as we go. So brewing and blending, is really barrel aging, blending in the fermenter, blending in the kegs, and then blending at the taps as well. So there's a lot of different components to that I'm sure people will see as we go.
That is extremely exciting to look forward to, especially the fresh on tap selection, the juice. There's a lot of different stuff you can do with that. So I'm extremely excited, and I didn't realize there was that much to that blending name. So I learned a lot here as well.
One other thing too I forgot to mention was another concept I thought was really cool is we might take the same IPA recipe and brew it 2 or 3 times and change the hop for each one. So now we've got a single hop Simcoe, a single hop Citra, a single hop Galaxy, whatever you will. And now you have 3 different IPAs with 3 different particular hops that people can enjoy. Or if you want to do 50-50, now you can do a Citra Simcoe, or you can do a Citra Eldorado, or Galaxy Citra, like all at the taps. So you allow people to experience what a hop tastes like by itself, but also through blending, they could determine, I really like an IPA that combines these 2 hops together. So it gives some personalization to it. And again, we'll find out if that model is sustainable, because I haven't seen any other breweries doing it, and maybe there's a reason for that, but part of me wants to still find a way to deliver that experience even though I haven't seen it yet. So there's got to be a first time for everything, right?
That is true. I think it definitely goes to that extreme beer nerd for sure. I would love to do it, especially knowing some of the different flavor elements and how they may combine. I look forward to that. I've never seen it anywhere else, like you said, so
very cool to try to do, and it definitely expands the amount of variety you have just by combining a few different beers. So you might only have 7 beers on tap, but you have endless possibilities to kind of blend them. So that's a really cool and unique way to do it. And it definitely segues into one of the questions I had here was the thing I love the most about Cartel is the variety of beers that you guys have on tap. I know a lot of places are very IPA, double IPA heavy. That's what sells, but here we've got a variety. If you look behind me on the menu, we've got cream ales, we've got saisons, we've got stouts, there's porters, there's a UK IPA right now. There's a lot of different variety. So how have the customers that have come in reacted to the amount of variety? Are they confused by some of these styles since they're not too used to seeing them? And then kind of what's your favorite style to brew overall that you've done so far?
I think one of the things that has worked really well for us is the variety. We feel like a lot of people that provide feedback are refreshed by the fact that our tap list is so diverse, and they've brought up how they've gone to so many other places and it's 80% IPAs, which is great, and there's people that appreciate that and are going to go there and they're going to try all of them and they're going to have a great time. We want to introduce people to a mixture of experimental styles that infuse and blend different flavors, along with untouched classic iterations of recipes. I've brewed the most dark, stout barley wines throughout my homebrew. That was kind of what I did a lot of. Cream ale, imperial cream ale. I mean, pretty much imperial everything is what I used to make. So when you make something, and I didn't make it for the sake of making it strong. It's whenever you end up with a higher gravity, higher alcohol beer, it just means you've used a lot more ingredients. So when you use more ingredients, you get more robust flavors, you get more of that grain character, you get a lot more things than just alcohol. So kind of pushing the boundaries of flavors and tastes naturally results in higher sugar content and a higher alcohol content, but it's being able to balance those flavors. So it's actually been amazing. I mean, we brewed an English mild simply because I was craving one and I wanted to drink one, and I'm like, well, let's just make one. And so we made one, and some people say, it's a tough beer to sell. Not everybody likes that style. We sold that beer so fast, and people asked for it, and we just made another batch just because, hey, I love the fact that there are people that are appreciating an English mild in the summertime or any time of year. It's a great beer. So we're letting the customers and what they appreciate and what they love influence the decisions we make about what we brew and what we put on that list. Obviously the saison we have is actually the first saison I've ever brewed in my life. It came out real nice. We were able to obtain some peaches from Bennett Orchards in Delaware, some of the best peaches I've ever had, some of the best in the country according to some people. And so, having something like that, a couple of fruit-infused beers, a couple of hoppy beers, a couple of clean, crisp beers, and then, of course, your barley wines and your imperial stouts and all of that stuff. I mean, it's the kind of tap list I would want to walk into, so I'm glad to see that the customers that come in are equally excited about a tap list that I would be excited about, so it's really cool.
I think it's definitely one of the most variety I've seen at a brewery, especially around here. I obviously try to stay in Pennsylvania as much as possible and support local to me, but I do venture out, but I've never seen this much variety consistently at a brewery, especially 6 months old, trying unique styles, things that might not typically sell. A lot of people might play it safe, but you're brewing, like you said, just stuff you want to brew, and it's selling, and that's wonderful. So I hope people continue to come back to see what you have next, what styles that maybe were considered dead that you might resurrect. Very exciting. I look forward to seeing what's coming for it. But that kind of goes here with one. This is a hypothetical. If you could make a beer with anyone in the world, any brewer, any brewery, whatever you might consider, who would it be and why?
That is a loaded question, Chris. It's tempting to be a little bit jaded with the collab idea because it's happening so often, and we have been contacted by people to do a collab. We haven't done anything yet, other than the Lancaster Brewers Guild collab, which was a lot of fun. I love what's going on with the Guild. I feel like if we're going to do a collab, it would have to be intentional. There would have to be a purpose to it. Obviously, the co-marketing, co-branding component for exposure is, there's value to that. But I think it should be an alignment of ideas, ideology, beliefs about brewing, appreciations about certain styles, and I'm sure that's the case with so many of these collaborations. I just want to make sure that we're not doing it just to do it. I think if I had to pick any brewery I could have a collaboration with, it would probably have to be Hill Farmstead. I have so much respect for that brewery and the quality that comes out of that brewery. They're regarded, I would consider them one of the best breweries in the world. To be able to execute all sorts of styles from sour to Pilsner to really well done, balanced IPA, Saisons, and then barrel-aged imperial stouts that are just what they are with no added flavors, and they just taste phenomenal. I would say if I had to pick, I think Sean Hill would be someone I would love to have a conversation with, or at least have a beer with. Let's start there. Collaborations are what they are, but yeah.
It's always good to see who a brewer respects the most in the industry, or someone that they highly regard. And I've heard that one now. I've heard Allagash. They definitely make really high quality stuff.
There's so many.
Yeah, there's every time you blink, there's a new brewery opening. But there are reasons that some of these breweries have been open for 20, 30 years, 40 years doing consistent brews. So it's always cool. I do like that you don't want to just jump into a collab just to do it. And speaking to your, take back the word cartel, that might be a good cause to potentially do a collab with at some point, where, some of the money goes to, anti-trafficking or stuff like that. That'd be a cool, unique way to implement that idea and then have a collab if we could get some kind of company. So definitely a cool way. I like that you're not just jumping in because, hey, I get so much more exposure if I brew with X or Y. So I respect that decision, and so far you're doing really well with how you're handling things. So you're not doing anything wrong in that regard. We only have a few left here for you. The next one is just, are there any events or anything coming up that you just want to tell the folks at home about?
There aren't really any events that I can think of right now. I mean, we just had our Blocktoberfest, which was a lot of fun. We were able to feature a few other local Oktoberfest-style Marzen lagers from our friends at our town, Rainy Cellars, Lancaster Brewing Company, Spring House. So not that I can think of in the near future, but we're always thinking of things. So obviously follow Facebook, Instagram. Those are kind of the two that we're using. We might start adding some other ones. We'll see. But that's kind of where we try to keep people informed, so just follow those pages. Send us a message if you have an idea. We love ideas. But no, right now it's just we got the food going. It's tasting really awesome. The feedback's been amazing. Come check us out. We'll probably be expanding our hours soon, so we'll have more availability for people to come in. Maybe some more lunch options potentially. One thing at a time. We're gonna take things one step at a time, so that we make sure that every experience that people have is likely to be a really awesome one, and a well thought out value, quality, all that good stuff. So yeah.
If you aren't already, follow them on Instagram, Facebook, all of that social media stuff. They do post a lot, and the photos are high quality and make me always thirsty for their beers. So highly recommend that. The other thing he's mentioned a few times, I just kind of want to bring it up, is the Lancaster's Brewing Guild. I know that Ryan, a few other people from Poor Man's are in there. There's Mooduck. There's a lot of people in there currently. There is a website, so I'll make sure to put that link down in the bottom so people. But basically, it's a cool little group for Lancaster brewers to get together, do collabs, do some fun stuff. Is there anything else that you can really tell us about that, Adam? What your kind of vision is with that group going forward?
We're still working on some things with our website. It really is just a way, and it's inspired by the Pittsburgh Brewers Guild. So it's a way for all of the Lancaster County breweries to stay connected and help each other. To give you an example, just today, I threw a message out to the other guild members asking if anybody had an extra brick of a particular lager yeast that we wanted to use, and I got a response within an hour and a half, from a brewery that's right down the street. And so everybody's helping everybody. So that's the cool thing, is it's creating an environment of camaraderie. Every single one of us in the guild would probably bend over backwards to help the other members of the guild. We're not here to cutthroat compete. Obviously there's friendly competition, but we want all of the customers that experience our tap rooms to also be referred to other tap rooms and to experience all the other variety that there is in Lancaster, because there are experiences that we feel passionate about here that we provide that are different than what's provided elsewhere. And so there's something for everybody, and there might be something that we don't necessarily offer here that they can find right down the street or around the county. And so why wouldn't we want to make sure that everybody in the county succeeds? And that's why I really love the Lancaster Brewers Guild. That's why I volunteered to be on the board and help as much as I can. So we're just getting started. We're working out some kinks, but I think that there's going to be some really awesome stuff in Lancaster County that comes as a result of this step to create the guild and really kind of establish a good foundation and a good relationship and just an environment, an arena, where people can get together regularly. We meet once a quarter. And sometimes the conversations that happen at those meetings turn into really good collaborative ideas that may lead to collabs. But, it comes with a mutual understanding or belief in something that's important when it comes to beer that we can learn from each other on. So it's really awesome. We actually have our quarterly meeting tonight.
I do appreciate you taking the time out of your day to sit down here with me. If you haven't already, definitely come down to Cartel Brewing. You won't be disappointed. A lot of variety here. Adam's a great guy. If he's here at the time, I'm sure he's going to hook you up with some samples and some bottles of things that you didn't even expect, but he is that kind of host. He's always looking out for the customer and making sure that they have the best time that they can in the tap room. So go ahead, check them out, follow them, everything like that. And until next time, guys, I'll catch you back on the next episode of Beer, Bourbon, and Games.